Alexander Reed's fingers traced the edge of his new employee name tag, Alex Wilson, as he studied his reflection in the staff bathroom mirror of Northern Delight's Toronto location. The fluorescent lights cast unflattering shadows under his eyes, making the 42-year-old restaurateur look older than his years. His normally perfectly trimmed salt and pepper hair was deliberately styled to appear more casual, and his usual bespoke suits had been replaced by a polyester uniform that made his skin itch. "New guy, manager wants you on the floor in 5, called Marcus, a burly kitchen porter with tattoo-covered arms. He stuck his head through the doorway, adding, "And heads up, it's Saturday brunch rush." Alexander straightened his shoulders, muscle memory from 2 decades of board meetings fighting against the need to appear less polished. The latest, quarterly reports had revealed disturbing patterns across his Toronto locations: declining customer satisfaction, increasing staff turnover, and financial discrepancies that couldn't be explained by market fluctuations. After building Northern Delights from a single diner into a respected restaurant empire, he refused to watch it crumble due to mismanagement. The kitchen's familiar symphony of clattering pots and sizzling grills welcomed him, but from this vantage point, everything felt different. Line cooks called out orders in a mix of English, Spanish, and Tagalog, while dishwashers orchestrated a constant flow of plates and utensils through industrial washing machines. Jenny, a veteran busser with laugh lines around her eyes, took charge of his training. "First rule," she said, demonstrating how to balance a heavily loaded bus tub against his hip. "Never let your tub get too full. Second rule, watch where the servers are going. They move like Formula 1 drivers during rush hour." As Jenny guided him through the dining room, Alexander observed the staff dynamics with keen interest. Maria, a server with perfectly manicured nails, expertly handled 6 tables while training a nervous newcomer. The head chef, Diego, emerged periodically from the kitchen to check on customers, his weathered face breaking into genuine smiles, despite the pressure. Then he noticed her, table 7's server, auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, movements efficient but graceful, voice carrying just enough warmth to make each customer feel special. She handled a particularly difficult complaint about overcooked salmon with such skill that the angry customer left smiling and promising to return. "That's Olivia," Jenny whispered, noting his interest. "Best server we've got, single mom, works harder than anyone, but never complains. Watch and learn from her. She knows every regular's name, their kids, allergies, even remembers their anniversaries." Throughout his first shift, Alexander found himself gravitating toward Olivia's section, ostensibly to learn her techniques, but increasingly fascinated by her quiet competence. When a young busboy dropped an entire tray of water glasses, she appeared instantly, helping clean while distracting nearby customers with a charming story about her daughter's recent science project. 3 weeks into his undercover assignment, Alexander had compiled a mental dossier on each employee. Diego, the head chef, struggled with supplier quality but refused to compromise on standards. Maria moonlighted as a nail technician to support her elderly mother. Marcus, despite his intimidating appearance, spent his breaks reading philosophy books and helping servers with their college assignments. But it was Olivia who continued to intrigue him. Through careful observation and fragments of break-room conversations, he learned she lived in Scarborough with her 10-year-old daughter, Emma. Her ex-husband had vanished 5 years ago, leaving her with crushing debt and trust issues she masked behind professional efficiency. One morning, Alexander arrived early to find Olivia in the break room, makeup smudged despite her attempts to fix it with a compact mirror. Her ancient Toyota had finally died, forcing her to navigate Toronto's labyrinthine public transit system with Emma. 3 buses and a missed connection, she explained to Maria, voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. "Emma's got this huge science fair presentation today. I promised I'd be there by 7, but with this schedule..." She trailed off, squaring her shoulders in a way Alexander had come to recognize as her armor against life's disappointments. "White, I could cover your closing section," he found himself offering. "If management approves, of course." The gratitude in her eyes made something shift in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his early days of washing dishes and dreaming of his own restaurant. That evening, as he methodically cleaned tables, he overheard Olivia's phone conversation with Emma. Her daughter's excitement about winning second place with a project on renewable energy brought genuine joy to Olivia's voice, a marked difference from her professional warmth. The next day, Alexander noticed something that made his blood run cold. Jason Morris, the regional manager he'd trusted for years, berated a line cook for requesting time off for his mother's surgery. The same Jason who drove a new Mercedes and wore a watch worth more than most servers made in 3 months. The evidence accumulated like grease in a poorly maintained kitchen trap. Alexander discovered the first red flag while reviewing employee schedules. Systematic understaffing during peak hours, combined with suspicious overtime patterns that didn't match the time clock records. Late one evening, after volunteering to help with filing, he found himself alone in Jason's office. The regional manager's desk drawer yielded a treasure trove of damning documentation: falsified maintenance records, doctored inventory, reports, and most disturbing of all, a folder of denied employee benefit claims. Olivia's name caught his eye. The file detailed her request for Emma's asthma medication, a claim denied despite complete documentation. Alexander's hands tightened on the paper as he read Jason's notation. Insufficient proof of medical necessity. Denial recommended to maintain quarterly targets. The next morning, he watched Jason stride through the restaurant like a peacock in an expensive suit, criticizing server appearances and threatening hour cuts if sales didn't improve. When he snapped at Olivia for spending too long with a table celebrating a 90th birthday, Alexander had to step into the walk-in freezer to cool his temper. He wasn't always like this, Diego confided later, prepping vegetables with practiced precision. When Jason first started, he actually cared about the food, the people. Now, the chef shrugged, his knife rhythmically chopping carrots. Money changed him, or maybe it just showed who he really was. Alexander observed more closely after that. He noticed how Jason manipulated the scheduling to prevent part-time employees from qualifying for benefits, how maintenance requests mysteriously disappeared, how food costs dropped while supplier invoices remained suspiciously high. But exposing Jason immediately would mean revealing his own identity. The trust he'd built with the staff, especially Olivia, would evaporate. For the first time in his career, Alexander found himself paralyzed by the human cost of business decisions. That night, in his sparsely furnished temporary apartment, he reviewed his notes. The numbers told one story: systematic theft and mismanagement threatening his company's reputation. But the faces of his co-workers told another. People, like Olivia, working themselves to exhaustion while fighting a rigged system. Toronto's autumn painted the city in brilliant colors, and Alexander found himself spending more time with Olivia during breaks and after shifts. One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the restaurant sharing leftover maple butter tarts, she opened up about her dreams. "I've been saving," she said, watching leaves dance across the parking lot. "Just a little each month. Probably crazy. But I've always wanted my own place." She described her vision: a small cafe with mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, and the kind of atmosphere that made people want to linger over coffee and conversation. "Oh, what's stopping you?" he asked, genuinely curious. Olivia laughed softly. "Reality. Emma's education fund comes first. Then there's the debt from Tom, my ex. He had a gambling problem he hid pretty well until he didn't. Left me with a remortgaged house and maxed out credit cards." Their friendship deepened through shared meals and quiet conversations. He learned that Emma inherited her mother's determination, maintaining honor roll grades despite their financial struggles. Olivia showed him her daughter's artwork, vibrant scenes full of optimistic details that revealed both talent and resilience. During a particularly busy Sunday brunch, Alexander watched Olivia handle multiple crises with grace: a dropped tray, a shellfish allergy scare, and a power outage that left them serving coffee manually for an hour. Through it all, she maintained her composure, even finding time to help an overwhelmed new server manage his section. "You make it look easy," he commented during their break. "Nothing worth doing is easy," she replied, sharing her emergency chocolate stash. "But that doesn't mean it can't be worthwhile." One rainy evening, when bus service was disrupted, Alexander offered Olivia a ride home. In the intimate space of his modest rental car, she finally shared the full story of her marriage's collapse. "Tom was charming," she said, watching raindrops race down the window. "He knew exactly what to say, how to make everything seem okay even when it wasn't. By the time I realized how bad things were, he'd already..." She paused, collecting herself. Let's just say I learned expensive lessons about trust. Alexander gripped the steering wheel tighter, thinking of Jason's similar talent for manipulation. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us worst, he offered, guilt gnawing at his conscience. Olivia turned to study his profile. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Maybe I am, he replied carefully, aware of how his own deception might soon hurt her. But I'd like to think some people are worth trusting again. The first crack in Alexander's carefully constructed identity appeared during a busy Saturday service. Richard Chen, a regular customer and prominent restaurant critic, did a double take while being seated in Olivia's section. Alexander felt the recognition flash across the man's face. He'd been featured in Chen's magazine coverage of Toronto's rising restaurateurs just last year. Chen's eyebrow rose questioningly, but Alexander's subtle headshake was met with understanding. The critic's reputation for discretion was well known in the industry. Still, the near exposure left Alexander unsettled, especially when he caught Olivia watching the exchange with unusual intensity. Later that week, during inventory, Olivia's normally fluid movements seemed hesitant around him. She'd pause mid-conversation, studying him with the same careful attention she gave to difficult customers. "You know what's strange?" she said finally, counting wine bottles with methodical precision. "You count inventory like someone who's done it 1,000 times, but you document everything like you're building evidence." Alexander's heart rate quickened. "I've worked in a lot of restaurants," he replied, the practiced explanation feeling hollow. "So have I," she countered, setting down her clipboard. "But you notice things others miss. The way you spotted that discrepancy in the seafood invoices. How you knew exactly which questions to ask when the health inspector came through." She touched his arm gently. "Who are you really, Alex?" The warmth of her hand through his sleeve made lying harder. "Someone trying to do the right thing," he managed, hating how true and false the words felt simultaneously. That evening, he overheard her talking to Emma on the phone about trust and honesty, a homework discussion about To Kill a Mockingbird that felt pointedly relevant to his situation. Meanwhile, Jason's behavior grew more erratic. He installed cameras in the break room without notice, claiming security concerns. Staff schedules became increasingly punitive, with senior servers like Olivia suddenly assigned slower sections. The truth exploded on an ordinary Tuesday evening, during what Jason announced as a mandatory staff meeting. Alexander knew something was wrong the moment he saw the regional manager's vindictive smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jason announced, tablet in hand, "I'd like to introduce you to our special guest." He turned the screen around, displaying Alexander's corporate headshot from the Northern Delights website. "Alexander Reed, CEO and founder of our humble establishment." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. Alexander stood, his eyes automatically seeking Olivia's. The hurt in her expression cut deeper than any business loss he'd ever suffered. "All this time," she whispered, her voice carrying in the quiet room. "Every conversation, every shared break, every story about Emma." Her hands trembled as she gathered her things. Was any of it real? "Olivia, please." He stepped forward, but she backed away. "I told you about Tom, about starting over, about trust." Her laugh held no humor. "At least he didn't pretend to be my friend while spying on me." Before he could respond, she walked out, leaving Alexander standing in the wreckage of his deception. Around him, faces he'd grown to know and respect reflected varying degrees of betrayal and disappointment. Jason's triumphant expression faltered when Alexander turned to him, executive authority settling back onto his shoulders like a familiar coat. "Now that we're being honest," he said, voice cold, "let's discuss those denied medical claims, and the missing overtime payments, and the interesting pattern I've noticed in our supplier invoices." The regional manager's face paled. "Those allegations are documented," Alexander cut in. "Every discrepancy, every denied claim, every manipulated schedule. Did you think I was just playing busboy for fun?" The staff watched the exchange with growing understanding. Diego stepped forward, arms crossed. "The maintenance request that disappeared. Logged and tracked," Alexander confirmed. Maria spoke up next. The benefit claims that kept getting lost? All recorded. Jason backed toward the door. You can't prove. Actually, Marcus interrupted, pulling out his phone. I've been keeping my own records. Those philosophy books I read during breaks? Great covers for taking notes on all the shady stuff you've been pulling. The room erupted in overlapping voices as more employees stepped forward with their own stories and evidence. But Alexander barely heard them, his attention fixed on the empty doorway where Olivia had disappeared. The week following the revelation passed in a whirlwind of corporate meetings, legal consultations, and damage control. Alexander moved swiftly, firing Jason and initiating a full audit of all Toronto locations. Every denied medical claim was reviewed and approved. Back pay was issued for unpaid overtime, and a comprehensive employee benefits package was introduced. But these victories felt hollow without Olivia's presence. She'd taken personal leave, her absence leaving a palpable void in the restaurant. Alexander found himself staring at her empty locker, remembering shared laughs over coffee and quiet conversations about dreams and second chances. She hasn't answered any of our calls, Maria informed him, concern evident in her voice. Emma's okay. I dropped off some groceries yesterday. But Olivia, she's hurting. Mr. Reed. Alexander nodded, the formal address still feeling strange from someone he'd worked alongside. Thank you for checking on them. And please, it's still Alex. He spent hours drafting and discarding messages to Olivia, each attempt feeling inadequate. How could he explain that his deception had led to positive changes? That the connection they'd formed was genuine, despite its foundation of lies. Late one evening, Alexander found himself driving to Scarborough, a folder of documents tucked under his arm. He located Olivia's modest apartment building and was heading toward the entrance when he spotted her at a nearby playground, watching Emma draw on a bench. Olivia tensed when she saw him approach. 5 minutes, he said softly. Please. She nodded curtly, and they walked to a bench while Emma continued sketching, occasionally glancing their way with undisguised curiosity. I started as a dishwasher when I was 16, Alexander began, opening the folder to reveal old photos. Worked every position in restaurants for 15 years before starting Northern Delights. Going undercover wasn't about spying, it was about remembering where I came from, understanding what was really happening in my restaurants. He showed her documentation of the changes he'd implemented, including a new college fund program for employees, children, and improved health benefits. But none of this matters if I've lost your trust. The man you knew, Alex Wilson, that's who I really am. The CEO title is just a job, but the person who shared maple butter tarts with you and listened to your dreams, that's the real me. Olivia remained silent for a long moment, watching Emma in the distance. Do you know what hurts the most? She finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I'd finally found someone I could trust completely. Someone who saw me, not just as a single mom or a server, but as a person with dreams and value. You did, Alexander insisted. Everything between us was real. My name and job title were the only lies. She turned to face him, eyes glistening. How can I believe that? How do I know this isn't just another performance? Spring brought new beginnings to Northern Delights. The Toronto location had transformed under Alexander's direct oversight, with improved working conditions and a palpable shift in morale. Olivia had returned to work after much deliberation, accepting a promotion to assistant manager while also enrolling in a business management course, part of the company's new education assistance program. Their relationship rebuilt slowly, a trust returning through actions rather than words. Alexander made a point of being present, working shifts alongside the staff and ensuring every employee concern was addressed personally. One evening, as they closed up the restaurant, Olivia approached him. I've been thinking about that cafe idea, she said hesitantly. With the business classes and the new entrepreneurship program you've started. Alexander felt a surge of hope. Are you considering applying? She nodded. It's terrifying, but I think I'm ready to try. Emma's so excited about the idea, she's already designing logos. I'd be happy to look over your business plan, he offered, careful not to overstep. As a mentor, of course. Olivia's smile held a hint of her old warmth. "I'd like that, but first, there's something I need to say." She took a deep breath. "I was angry for a long time, not just about the deception, but because I'd started to have feelings for you, and I thought none of it was real." Alexander's heart raced. It was all real, Olivia. Every moment. "I believe you," she said softly. "But trust, it's going to take time to fully rebuild." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I'm willing to put in that time, if you are." As they walked out into the cool spring evening, the cherry trees lining the street were in full bloom. A gentle breeze sent petals swirling around them, like nature's own celebration of new beginnings. "So," Olivia said, a hint of her old teasing tone returning, "does the great Alexander Reed have any secret tips for aspiring cafe owners?" He laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Well, first rule of a successful cafe: never underestimate the power of a good maple butter tart." As summer heated up Toronto's streets, Northern Delights became a model for corporate responsibility. Other locations began adopting the changes Alexander had implemented, with employee satisfaction and customer reviews soaring across the board. The Toronto restaurant's breakroom wall, once bare save for mandatory safety posters, now featured a colorful collage of employee success stories. Photos from the first graduation ceremony of the Education Assistance Program took center stage, with Olivia's beaming face prominent among the graduates. Her cafe dream was materializing as a corner space within Northern Delights, a cozy nook named Emma's Place that showcased local artists and served Olivia's now famous maple butter tarts. Regular customers who had known her as a server now sought her business advice, and she mentored new employees with the same kindness that had first captured Alexander's attention. One busy Friday evening, Alexander found himself bussing tables, alongside Marcus, who was now finishing his philosophy degree. "You know," Marcus mused, stacking plates with practiced ease, "Plato said that good actions give strength to ourselves and inspire good actions in others." Alexander glanced across the dining room, where Olivia was deftly handling a complicated order while training a new server. "I think I'm seeing that in action," he replied. Later, as they closed up shop, Olivia approached Alexander with an excited gleam in her eye. "Remember that community outreach program we discussed? I think I've found the perfect partnership opportunity." She outlined her plan to collaborate with a local youth center, offering barista training and part-time employment opportunities to at-risk teens. Alexander listened, marveling at how she'd taken his initial idea and transformed it into something far more impactful. "What do you think?" she asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I think," he said slowly, "that I'm looking at the future CEO of Northern Delights." Olivia laughed, but there was a new confidence in her posture. "Let's start with making Emma's Place a success. Then we'll talk about corporate takeovers." Autumn leaves were turning when Alexander and Olivia finally admitted that their relationship had evolved beyond mentorship and friendship. Their first official date was a casual affair. Cooking, dinner together in Olivia's small apartment, with Emma acting as a very enthusiastic sous chef. As months passed, Alexander found himself spending more time in Scarborough than at his downtown penthouse. Emma's artwork began appearing on his refrigerators, and he discovered a talent for helping with fifth-grade science projects. It was Emma who first broached the subject of marriage, catching both adults off guard during a Sunday morning pancake breakfast. "So, when are you going to make it official?" she asked, syrup dripping from her fork. "Because I've already designed your wedding invitations?" Olivia nearly choked on her coffee, while Alexander found himself grinning. "Well," he said, meeting Olivia's startled gaze, "I suppose that depends on what your mom thinks about the idea." Their wedding was held in the restaurant after hours, transformed by twinkling lights and flowers. Emma, beaming with pride, walked her mother down the aisle while employees past and present filled the seats. Alexander's vows drew both laughter and tears. "I came here looking for problems to fix, but instead, I found the missing ingredient in my life's recipe. Olivia, you've taught me that true success is measured not in profit margins, but in the lives we touch and the love we share." Olivia's response was equally moving. "Alex, You showed me that sometimes the best things in life come in unexpected disguises and that second chances are worth the risk. You and Emma are my home, my family, and my greatest adventure." 2 years later, Alexander and Olivia sat in Emma's place, sharing maple butter tarts with their 6-month-old son, James. The cafe had become a community hub, its walls adorned with local artwork, including several of Emma's increasingly impressive paintings. Northern Delights had expanded, but with a new philosophy that prioritized employee welfare and community engagement. Each new location included a unique cafe space, managed by employees who shared Olivia's vision of creating more than just restaurants, creating homes away from home. Olivia, now overseeing operations for the entire Toronto region, balanced her corporate responsibilities with hands-on involvement in their community programs. Alexander had stepped back from day-to-day management, focusing on long-term strategy and mentoring the next generation of restaurant entrepreneurs. As they watched the sunset through the cafe's windows, Olivia rested her head on Alexander's shoulder. Who would have thought, she mused, that a millionaire in disguise would find love while buzzing tables? Alexander smiled, watching Emma teach James how to paint with pureed carrots on his high chair tray. "Sometimes the best disguise is simply being yourself," he replied. "And sometimes, the greatest riches are found in the most unexpected places." The restaurant hummed with the sounds of laughter, clinking plates, and comfortable conversation, a symphony of ordinary moments that, when woven together, I created something extraordinary. A story of love that began in the shadows, but flourished in the light. What did you think of the story? Leave a comment and rate this story from 0 to 10. What rating would you give it and why? 2 buttons will appear next to it. One to subscribe if you haven't already, and the other to watch other interesting stories. Choose one. Thanks for watching this far. See you soon.